Greetings and salutations, everyone. I hope everyone is still doing well, and welcome to today's bonus upload. Before we jump into it, a couple links. As many of you know, I rely on Patreon, PayPal, channel membership, and the merch to help the channel to continue to grow and go. Links to Patreon, PayPal, and channel membership is in the description below. Merch displayed directly under the video. Also, Dogman Frightening Encounters, Volume 1 through 3, the audiobook versions. They were written and researched by Tom Lyons, narrated and produced by me, Jeff Nadolny. Those audiobooks are available on Audible, Amazon, and iTunes, links to which are also in the description as well. And finally, last but definitely not least, if you'd really like to help support the channel to continue to grow and go, simply subscribe. It doesn't cost a cent. Click the like button, takes half a second. If you don't want to miss out on any of the informative uploads I put out daily, click that bell icon, and folks, please leave a comment. Why? Well, because all these things really do help the channel to continue to grow and go. And folks, they really do matter. Now, everyone, I have taken far too much of your time. Let's jump into this bonus upload, shall we? Today's first encounter. A bit of backstory before I start this. I live in northern British Columbia, Canada. And a couple years back, my friend invited me to come with him, his mom, and his sister to a resort by a lake about an hour and a half so out of town. It was at the end of June and the beginning of July. I put resort in quotations because it's a main log building where you check in, but it's also a restaurant as well. A few log cabins and some spots down by the lake for RVs and stuff to park in. There's a highway that you turn off of onto the lot where the check-in building is. And to the right of the highway is forest for miles, as well as everywhere else around the area. The only thing that stands out is the highway, which cuts through the woods. Around the lake, there's some houses and whatnot, but generally speaking, if it's not a long weekend, there are not too many people out here. The cabins and RV area is separate, and the main building is about 5 to 8 minute walk away from the cabins up a spiral road. A little bit past the main building, there's a clearing where you can sit at a couple of tables and look like you haven't been sat in for 10 years or so. There's vines and grass that have grown all around them. And about 50 feet into the woods past those tables are 2 small lagoons surrounded by an old wire fence. I'll talk about why the lagoons and the table area are important later. We got there in the evening, unloaded the car, got acquainted with the log cabin, which was really nice, by the way, and then we went out to explore. Not too much interesting stuff happened on the first day, as we did not explore a whole lot before dark. Skip to the next day, and it's cloudy and rainy, which we actually were hoping for, as that meant there were very few people at the resort and we'd have free reign over it. We explored down by the lake and around the cabin areas more thoroughly, and eventually make our way up to the clearing where the tables are located. We looked at the tables and saw that they hadn't been touched in what looked like a long time from the amount of grass and weeds that had built up around it. And while investigating, I noticed that around 50 feet or so back in the woods, there was what looked to be a clearing. We slid down into this ditch-like area, which was probably around 8 feet difference in elevation from the table area, and tramped through the brush. We eventually came to a spot, which we were pretty sure were lagoons, due to the way they were constructed, and noticed there was a fence around it. We walked around the area, planning to leave, until we saw what looked like a spot where a large animal had walked over the fence and crushed a portion of it. Now, not really paying attention to the fact that a large animal may be in the area, we dismissed the thoughts and said it was probably bent like that for a long time. We messed around the area looking at the lagoons and eventually left, planning to come back the next day with some rocks to throw into the water, as it was getting time to eat dinner. The next day we came back to the tables, planning to go to the lagoon area once again. But before we had a chance to go down the ditch, we stopped because of a noise. This is what triggered the rest of the events in this experience. The noise we heard were those of walking over small twigs, snapping them in the lagoon/ditch area we had traveled the previous day. Keep in mind, those footsteps were not there before. We stuck around for about 10 minutes or so until we got hit with the most intense feeling of dread. After this, we said, "Screw this," and went back to our cabin where we played poker for the rest of the night. While playing, we discussed the events that had taken place and eventually laughed it off, saying it was probably just a bear passing through, or rabbits in the area. The next day, it was raining heavily and much darker than the past couple of days. We left our cabin and planned to go to the lagoon area later, but we wanted to chill around the medium forest area close to the cabins that I forgot to mention in the beginning of this. As I previously said, after we had originally gone to the lagoon area, things started to get weird. We were messing around in the woods, breaking big sticks on trees, when we heard what sounded like someone else doing the same thing about 200 feet away in the direction we were facing. It was hard to judge how far exactly it was because of the way the forest carries sounds, but it was pretty far in front of us. We wouldn't have cared too much about this until we took notice where it actually was. The entire area around there and beyond is all forested, and having someone in those forests along with us that far in, and in less than favorable weather, with very few people at the resort at the time, is unlikely. We decided to leave the area and come back later during the evening. Spoiler alert, that was not a good idea. So after leaving the area, we went around to the lagoon area and listened for a couple of minutes. We couldn't hear any walking, so we assumed that we were right about it being a passing forest creature. Not even 10 steps in, and I tell my friend to stop. We both stop and listen. We hear what sounds to be the steps again, but as they are coming in louder and faster, we get that same overbearing feeling of dread. We hightail it out of there, spooked, and we book it back to the cabin. Later that evening, we return to the forest clearing earlier, where we had heard the branch against the tree noise in the day. We again start smacking branches against the trees. This time not hearing anything, but as I turned to the left, something caught my eye. There was what appeared to be a person standing behind a tree, and I saw them duck behind it when they noticed that I had noticed them. Nearly crapping myself as I yelled to my friend that we needed to get out of here, so we sprinted back to the cabin. Later that night, while we were sitting in the loft area where the beds are, we were having a discussion about what had happened that day. With much less joking this time, we were trying to make sense of what happened. We started with the branch hitting the tree noise. At first, we tried to dismiss it by saying it was an echo, but remembered echoes don't come 5 seconds after hitting a tree. Only I saw the figure in the same area later, but I knew it was a person, or at least I thought it was a person. We weren't too sure about that, so we moved on to talking about the lagoon/table area. Nothing really too interesting came to the convo. We left the next day as our booking had ended. This isn't the end of the experience, however. We came back a year later around the same time, end of June, beginning of July. But we had brought another friend with us this time. We showed him around and briefed him about what happened the previous year, and he took it with a grain of salt, as any sane person would do. This eventually changed over the next 3 days. The activity this time around wasn't as much in the side of the forest where I saw the figure, and where me and my friend heard the noises, although we did hear returning knocks again, but at the lagoon table area. I'll skip to the juicy part. So after showing our friend the lagoon area, we decided to enter it after not hearing any noises. All went well, and we returned the next day. This time the footsteps were there once again, but a bit closer than before. We left the area, but returned an hour later. We were determined to see what was repelling us out of the area. But to get in, you had to be quiet. Slowly, we went down the ditch and to the lagoons without anything hearing us, and we did not see anything either. We heard something snap a little bit away, so without making too much noise, got out of there. The next and final day before we had to leave once again, we returned to the Table Lagoon area, where we were planning to go to the lagoons again. But when we were at the table area, we heard something new. It was a sort of screeching noise, but it sounded like a person almost. At first, we thought it was a person who had injured themselves and was calling for help. But I made everyone stop and just listen before doing anything. We listened, and from what I heard, it sounded like a mixture between a person yelling and an angry cat hissing and a shallow dog barking. My two friends decided that they wanted to get closer and investigate the sound, while I was opposed to this. We went anyway, but I stayed much further away as my gut was telling me that we needed to get out of there. We threw rocks near the area from where the sound was in hopes of flushing it out from its hiding spot. And when that didn't work, we got much closer. We were right at the edge of the ditch, close to the tables. When I got as close as my friends did, something happened. The thing that was making the sound had thrown another large log, or had knocked down a tree judging by the sound, but I didn't exactly stick around to investigate. I turned tail and bolted as fast as my legs would carry me. I was probably 15 feet ahead of my friends, as my danger reflexes were faster, and it registered to me faster that I needed to get the hell out of there. We were about 100 feet away when we came to a stop. Nothing was after us, but the sounds were resumed. We walked around the main building, and when we came around, there was a black bear standing there. We let out a sigh of relief, as we thought we had been spooked by a bear. But we then shifted back to our previous feeling of dread when the bear did the same thing as us. Got out of there as fast as it could. We didn't investigate any further and ran back to the cabin. Nothing further happened as we left the following day, due to the reservation being over. I might be going back this year, as it's approaching that same time. I don't know what the lagoon creature is, but I sure as hell know that it's not a bear. The other thing in the forest I'm still not sure about. I think they are separate things, as a woodsman or a tree knocker, as we've nicknamed it, is more elusive and seems to be luring us into the area, while the screecher is very territorial and aggressive. I've tried to find things online about similar experiences in the area, but I've come up empty-handed, which is another reason why I wanted to share this. I have no clue what's going on there, but I will share the location in case anyone wants to visit this place and investigate for themselves. Despite the strange things going on there, the location is very beautiful. The cabins are nice despite the springed beds. And the food at the restaurant is also quite tasty. The place is called Purdon Lake Resort. If you look it up on Google, it's one with the green roof. Today's second encounter. This happened 2013, I believe. I was 13 at the time. I was a middle child of 3, and I was dubbed the responsible one for most of my life. On this night, I'd be in charge of watching my siblings while my mom and grandparents went out. It wasn't often that my grandparents would leave the house, so when they did, they'd often be gone for the whole day. This was great in the eyes of my siblings and myself, mostly due to the fact that they enjoyed whatever I cooked, and we each got free time without judgmental eyes of our very strict grandparents. After dinner, I decided to enjoy time outside of my shared bedroom and take a seat in the living room. Now, if you were online frequently around this time, you'd know that this was when creepypasta fandom was at its peak. I was, and still am 10 years later, a huge fan of scary stories online. Because of my hyperfixation at the time, I loved letting my imagination get the best of me. I often used my free time on Omegle in hopes that I would find friends with similar interests. This happened often, though of course, as a naive young girl on a sketchy site, I often got my fair share of creepy encounters on there as well. On this particular night, a friend of my best friend at the time, whom I had met online, had found me on Omegle. They knew it was me due to my screen name that I used for just about everything. However, I never formally spoke to this person. They were a little older and thought it'd be hilarious to scare me. They, along with our mutual friend behind the scenes, used personal information in a sort of glitched font through a text feature, effectively beginning to scare the crap out of me. Eventually, I'd had enough. I slammed my laptop shut and nervously shot my friend a message telling him about the encounter. He urged me not to panic too much, knowing it was truly nothing to worry about, but I remained on edge. So when my small, almost always silent dog, Abby, started barking viciously at the door, I immediately felt sweat on my palms and my heart raced. It was already pitch black outside. In the front yard there was a single streetlight across the street, and in the back we had about 2.5 acres of woodland. I attempted to comfort Abby, but she was the most terrified and on guard that I had ever seen her. Even to this day she never growled like that. I didn't know why, but I desperately wanted to know what was out there. I thought for sure I'd see a horrible creature or a person like described in Omegle chat before. They had described my house and my life, so surely it was them outside. I don't know why I opened the door. It wasn't even locked due to how low crime was. But despite Abby's standing fur and angry growl, and despite knowing something bad could be out there, I turned the knob. I felt like I had to. I gripped the old cold knob and opened the door quickly. At first there was nothing. I stepped onto our small porch, sighing in premature relief before I had heard a crunch. The crunch of the leaves beneath me, under the porch. I froze. Right as I did, a terrible creature, person, I'm not sure, bolted from underneath our porch. It looked exactly like that old classic photo of the rake. If you don't know what I'm talking about, Google image the rake. Imagine this, but much longer, lankier limbs, and the bones showed much more, like someone with severe anorexia, but running on all fours. From what I could see in the very little amount of lighting, it was completely hairless. Its limbs were long, and I could see they were sinewy, malnourished frame even as it ran. It ran so fast, I couldn't move, I couldn't scream. Not until Abby darted after the creature down the road. That's when I began to panic. I screamed and cried for Abby to come back, and right as I did, I heard a horrible, monstrous screeching, and then a loud yelp from Abby. Then watched her tiny body run full speed back toward me up the porch and inside. I didn't stop to take in the scenery anymore. I ran inside behind her and slammed the door. I locked it and began checking every window as I cried and questioned reality. As I did this, my little sister came into the living room asking why I was yelling and crying. I simply told her Abby had almost gotten hit by a car, but that she's okay. Upon further investigation, I found that to be luckily the truth. The creature did not hurt her, so I assumed she realized the major size difference once she tried to face it and got scared. I kept it to myself so as not to terrify my siblings, but immediately told my mom the whole story when she got home. She had tried to calm me down, saying it must have been a deer or any other random woodland animal. When I called my best friend, he felt responsible for my intense fear. As I cried into the phone, he told me about his friend trying to scare me. The friend even shot me a message to apologize profusely. However, I assured them that what they did was nothing compared to what I saw outside. I know what I saw that day, and I will always stand by it. Whatever was lurking under our porch looked deformed, non-human, and ran faster than anything I had ever seen. Whatever was under our porch has made me believe that anything can be possible. This next bit is really just extra, but it reminded me of just how much this experience affected me. I also believe whatever may be out there could come back. Just the other day, I let my current dog Daisy outside, It was extremely dark. Just like that night, as I let her out, something shot from under the porch and began to fight with her. I have very bad eyesight, didn't have my glasses, and no porch light. So when my dog and the other animal just went silent, I ran to the bottom of the steps, ready to face what my mind kept telling me was that monster from my past. I called her and began sobbing and shaking. I was sure the creature came back, but Daisy wouldn't come out of the darkness, and I heard nothing. I had to get my mother-in-law and her boyfriend, who brought flashlights and an axe outside in a hurry. I told them that I thought it was another large dog, as to not seem unhinged. In the end, it was a possum. My dog had simply ignored it once it played dead. I guess she wanted to keep me on my toes. I know this isn't crucial to the main story, but it made me realize just how real that night truly was for me. I was so scared to relive it with less fortunate outcomes. One might blame it on general anxiety or my overall love for scary or supernatural, but I know what happened. Today's final encounter. A couple of months ago, my friend and I decided we wanted to go to this place called Black Canyon. It's a nice rural spot, not too many people go there, but the main attraction is the lake and the small cliffs that you can jump off of. It's always better to go later in the day, so the sun isn't beating on you the whole time, so my friend and I decided to be wise to get there around 6 p.m. It was honestly like any other day, nothing out of the ordinary. There were people hanging out in the middle of nowhere, and we were having a good time. I sent some off the cliff, but then I forgot about the natural water slide. That's about a 3 to 5 minute walk away from the lake. I asked the people to watch over my stuff, got my friend, and decided to go check it out, since I hadn't been there in a while. It took us about 5 minutes to get there, since my friend is very cautious. And looking at it now, if they hadn't been, I might have had a bad run-in with whatever the hell that was that we came into contact with. Right as we were about to go onto the slide, I heard an indescribable noise. The closest thing that I can describe it to is a demonic generator going off. It was certainly nothing I had ever heard before. In all honesty, I didn't believe what I was hearing at first, so I quickly turned to my friend and said, "Dude, did you just hear the same thing I did?" My friend turned and looked a little frightened and said, "Yeah." Neither of us could determine what it was, but that wasn't going to stop me from going down the slide. Yeah, that was a terrible decision. I started to walk down the natural water slide, leaving my friend behind, when I swear I saw a round head and a lanky arm fly behind a rock I was about to pass by. I froze at first, but I figured that my eyes were playing tricks on me. People see things that aren't real all the time, right? Anyway, I only took one step forward before I heard the same noise as before, only much more louder. The same demonic-like generator noise boomed out from behind the rock that I saw this thing dart behind. After that, I turned tail and ran as fast as I could back to my friend. I asked again, in a frightened tone, practically yelling, "Did you hear that?" My friend looked as on edge as I was, and just responded with a simple yes. After hearing my friend's answer, we ran as fast as we could back to the lake. When we came back out of breath, the people asked what was wrong. I told them what my friend and I had encountered, and they looked extremely surprised. A man then spoke up and told me that I was not the only one to have any sort of run-in with that. He told me that many people have told him they've heard strange noises by the waterfall. People believe it may be a crawler or something. After hearing that, I've never gone to that waterfall since. Something lingers there, and I don't really want to find out what. Alright guys, a set of just absolutely terrifying experiences for a great bonus upload. I hope you all enjoyed it as much as I enjoyed sharing it with you. I'd like to thank you all for supporting the channel. It is your support, after all, that keeps the channel growing and going, and honestly what gives people a place to share their experiences, ideas, and theories, judgment and ridicule free. simply treated with the respect that they deserve. Thank you. Everyone, please stay safe, happy, healthy, and ever vigilant, keeping an eye on our children, pets, family, and friends. These creatures are real, they are out there, and they are dangerous. Share this information with those you love and care about, and it may just help save their lives someday. Until next time, never stop asking questions, never stop searching for answers, and God bless.